Hello and welcome. We start with the developments in the Horn of Africa. Tensions between neighbours Ethiopia and Somalia are worsening further. Ethiopia has raised concerns as two of its rivals, Mogadishu and Cairo, forge closer partnerships. Egypt has delivered its first military aid to Somalia in more than 4 decades. This comes after both nations signed a security pact earlier this month. Egypt has also offered to send troops to a new peacekeeping mission in Somalia to fight Islamist terror group Al-Shabab. The new mission is due to replace an African Union peacekeeping force in January, which also includes up to 10,000 Ethiopian troops. However, Mogadishu had threatened to kick out the Ethiopian troops. Now, this is due to a dispute over a port deal that Ethiopia signed with Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland, in January. Under the deal, Ethiopia would gain access to Somaliland's port, and in return, it agreed to become the first nation to recognize Somaliland as an independent nation. Somalia called this deal as an attack on its sovereignty. Since the deal was signed, Somalia has drawn closer to Ethiopia's other rival, Egypt. Egypt and Ethiopia are also at odds for years now over the Addis Ababa construction of a vast hydro dam on the headwaters of the Nile River. Egypt has long viewed the massive $4.2 billion dam as a threat to its fragile water security. Egypt has also condemned Ethiopia's deal with Somaliland, and it has ramped up military cooperation with Somalia. The Ethiopian Foreign Ministry on Wednesday accused Somalia of colluding with external actors without mentioning the military aid it received from Egypt. Ethiopia warned that a new African Union-led mission for Somalia could worsen tensions in the volatile East Africa. Somalia has ruled out Ethiopian troops participating in the new peacekeeping mission if the deal with Somaliland is not cancelled. Now, these developments come as efforts to resolve the dispute between neighbours Somalia and Ethiopia are ongoing. Somalia's close ally, Turkey, has facilitated indirect talks between the neighbours. A first round of talks concluded in Ankara this month, with all sides noting the progress. And a third round of talks is scheduled in Ankara on the 17th of September. Will the East African neighbours be able to resolve their tensions? Now, for more on this, we have with us Yusuf Bilal, who is an expert on the Horn of Africa. He is joining us live from Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, what are the strategic motivations behind Egypt's decision to send military aid to Somalia after more than 4 decades?
Well, the Egyptian decision comes as a result of a bilateral defense agreement between Egypt and Somalia that was negotiated and signed at the request of Somalia following the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Ethiopia and the de facto state Somaliland, that is not recognized by any government within the international community. So this Memorandum of Understanding that gives Ethiopia access to the sea. We have to keep in mind that Ethiopia, since the independence of Eritrea and in 1991, became a landlocked country. It has some commercial access through the port of Djibouti, but what Ethiopia has been seeking is to have a kind of sovereign use of the coast, which on the Red Sea or the Indian Ocean, that would give Ethiopia a kind of military use and naval use of the coast, which it didn't have at the moment with commercial access to Djibouti. So we have to understand and keep in mind this first as the motivation for why Ethiopia was signed that first agreement with Somaliland, with the promise of recognizing Somaliland as an independent state in exchange of Ethiopia's access to more than 20 kilometers of coastal land and with a quasi-sovereign use of that access to the sea. And it is in reaction to that, Somalia signed two military agreements, one with Egypt and the other with Turkey. And it is part of this bilateral agreement that Egypt is sending those troops. Now, Egypt obviously is in tension with Ethiopia for at least the last 10 years over the issue of the building and the filling of the Ethiopian the Grand Renaissance Dam. And given that tension over the use of Nile waters, this is a way for Egypt, on the one hand, to respond to the request of Somalia, because at the end of the day, Somalia is an independent state, is a sovereign state. If it has a military deal with Egypt, it is in a position to make that request on a bilateral basis. And for Egypt, obviously, there are strategic considerations related to putting more pressure, obviously, on the Ethiopian government regarding a number of strategic issues, and the most important being the use of the Nile water.
Right. And Yusuf, what are the potential implications for regional stability and security in the Horn of Africa following this military aid from Egypt to Somalia?
Well, there are at least three major implications and risks given the current tensions between the three countries. First, there is a common regional threat. It is a transnational threat, which is the threat of Al-Shabab, which is like the equivalent of Taliban in Afghanistan at the time for 20 years. So there is a serious risk within the region, and particularly the countries that have a border with Somalia, meaning including Ethiopia, Kenya, and other countries in the region like Uganda, like Djibouti, and so on, Eritrea, and so on, that can face cross-border operations against their territory by Al-Shabaab. So the current tensions do not serve regional cooperation against this threat. The second issue is that we have is that Ethiopia may react, and it has one card in its tool within hand, which is how it will use the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, because then it may also react to the Egyptian position in that regard. The other aspect is if Ethiopia, if there is, given that Ethiopia has a very important presence, it's the most important military presence in Somalia in fighting Al-Shabaab, if Ethiopia reacts also to that by a unilateral withdrawal of its troops, it may weaken also the fight against Al-Shabaab. And overall, what we have is increased militarization of the region, and this is not boding well for the next few weeks, given all the already tense situation in Sudan, with the civil war in Sudan, with the tensions in South Sudan. So you add to it also what is happening in the Red Sea with the war in Gaza. All this mix is a kind of macrocosm of the current military and security upheavals that the world is living today
in the region. Right. And Yusuf, just finally, how is the international community, particularly the African Union and neighboring countries that you've mentioned, responding to Egypt's military support to Somalia?
Well, the African Union now, the main issue, what is at stake, is the mandate of the new peacekeeping mission, because the current African peacekeeping mission, or more precisely a kind of peace enforcing mission, which is robust, which is in a position to conduct offensive operations against Al-Shabab, its mandate is ending this December, in 3 months' time. So, and at the moment, the mandate of the new peacekeeping mission that will replace ATMIS, the current mission based in Somalia, to which Ethiopia is part, is being negotiated. And the key question here, if there is an opportunity to de-escalate the tensions, is to have a discussion and cautious mandate, new mandate of the new mission. And the key question here is the component that is related to Somalia, that at the end of the day is based on the agreement of the sovereign of Somalia as a sovereign state, but you also have a regional dimension to this peacekeeping mission. And here there is room for Ethiopia to be part also of this mission. So the current discussions around that mandate are key to de-escalate the tensions and have a political solution to the current military rivalry between the different powers.
Yusuf, thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Thanks for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
You're welcome.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for a future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
On the today, the T20 World Cup Bangladesh has moved across to the West Indies. What can we expect